Okay, we're on standard 2, so there's two things you should have. You should have this with a bunch of graphs, and then this paper right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's explain some things here about the graphs. It's not really all that hard. We did it in Algebra 1 at the end of the year last year and the year before, but you probably need a refresher. I get that. So let's take this equation, y equals 3x plus 2. Now it's in slope-intercept form. It'd have a slope of 3, a y-intercept 2. But if I made a table of values where I'm putting -1, 0, and 1 in for x, if I take 3 and multiply it by the x, the first x is -1. Well, that's going to be -3, and then I'm going to add 2. That gives me -1, as you can see right there. Now 0, 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2, and 3 times 1 is 3, plus, that should be 5. I'm an idiot. Okay. And that's why that's a line, because it just keeps going up. Okay, it's going to keep going up. It's not going to go down at all. Okay, if I keep on moving down 2, 3, 4, 5, it's just going to keep going up by 3 units. That's why that results in a line on a graph. Now, let's say y equals 4x to the second power. Remember, if you take a number to the second power, you're just taking it times itself. So, I got 4. And I'm going to put -1 in for the x, close it, and the second power is this x to the second. Now, before I hit equals, think about it. If you take -1 times itself, -1 times -1, that's +1, okay? So just this part right here will result in the +1 product, times 4 is 4, okay? Now, if I put 0 in, 0 times itself, 0 times 4 is still 0. Now, if I put 1 in here, that's taking 1 times itself, which is 1 times 4 is 4. So we're back to 4. So what happens is we go down, and then we come back up. So that is what is known as a parabola. Okay, so x to the second power, any equation I have to graph with x to the second power is going to result in the parabola graph, and that's known as a quadratic equation, okay, x to the second power. However, what's confusing, and you have a little sheet here, there are 3 types of formations for parabola equations that you have to graph. They're standard form. In standard form, we have y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. A, b, and c are values. Those letters are circled because they won't be in the equation. They'll be numbers instead. And if there's not a number in front of the x, it would be a 1. Okay? A, b, and c. Okay? This is how to graph it, but let's not get to that yet. Now, sometimes you'll have y equals a number a, and there'll be one parentheses with an x. X will be there, and then plus or minus, and then there'll be a value h, and then outside that parentheses will be to the second power, and then a lot of times there'll be a plus or minus another number here. A, h, and k are values. They will not be in the equation, okay? There'll be a number instead of there, okay? One parentheses with x inside to the second power is vertex form. Okay, and the third type is factored form. There will be 2 parentheses on factored form. Okay, there'll be a number a sometimes right there. Okay, and I'm going to put down here a, p, and q are values. That means they won't be in the equation. There'll be numbers in its place. So a, p, and q will be numbers, okay? There'll be 2 parentheses. You actually won't see a second power, but there'll be an x in each parentheses, and x times x is x to the second power, okay? And that's known as factored form, okay? So if there are no if you have a second power, it's a parabola. If we don't have any parentheses, it's standard form. If we have 1 parentheses with that second power outside, it's vertex form. And if I've got 2 parentheses with x inside, it's factored form. Okay. All right, now let's see what we can do to graph. First, we need to know what formation it's in. So, easy question. y equals 2x squared minus 8x plus 3. Do you have a parentheses? The second power is there, so it's a parabola because of that second power. And is there a parentheses? No, there's not. So it's automatically in standard form. Okay, now when graphing any parabola, you need to make an XY table, and we need to come up with 3 points. Because if you're going to graph a parabola, the most important point is the middle, and that's known as the vertex. Okay, some parabolas will end up like this, others like this. So let's look at what we're going to do on standard form. Now, the most important point's the vertex, the middle vertex point, okay? And that's going to be the middle x, because there's going to be 3 x values, the middle. You use a formula to find the vertex for standard form parabola using the formula opposite of b divided by the product of 2 and a. Now, you're like, well, what's b and what's a? Well, a is whatever's in front of the x squared, and b is whatever in front of the x, as you can see here, ax squared, bx. C we don't really use in a formula. I mean, it's 3. You can put it there if you want, but I don't really label the C because it's not used for anything. Okay, so what's the opposite of b? B is -8, so the opposite would be +8. You need to make your b opposite and then underline it. Because on the bottom of the line, you got the product of 2, always 2. 2 is part of the formula. And whatever your a is 2. So, find the product of 2 and 2, it's 4. Okay, so 8 over 4. And then 8 divided by 4 equals 2. And that's your middle vertex x coordinate. Okay, that's your middle one. Don't put it here, put it in the middle. Now what you do is you add 1 and subtract 1 to find your outer x values. So add 1 to 2, that's 3, and subtract 1 from 2, that's 1. Okay, pretty easy. And now you substitute on your calculator to find y. I want you to use your calculator. I don't want you trying to do, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, it takes too long. Okay, that's like from 1960s before they had these calculators. Okay, so I've got 2. Make a parentheses in place of the x, and we're going to be putting that 3 in first. Close the parentheses, and we got to put that to the second power. So hit the x to the second button, and then -8. And then there's another x, so another parentheses, and we're going to put in 3 again, and then +3. So I got -3 for my first y output value. Okay, now we're going to put 2 in. So we got 2 to the second power, -8, and then 2. Now we just do the same thing, but now we're going to put 2 in, +3. Gives me -5. Now I want you to put 1 in, but I'm saying this value and this value should end up the same. Okay, because we did our vertex right, but these outer y's should end up as the same. I'm hoping that this is negative, back to -3. So I've got 2, and then I put 1 in, second power, -8, and then 1, +3. Okay, I got -3. Just like you graph them and you're good to go. So 3, -3. This is the x, this is the y. So I go to 3, 1, 2, 3. Sorry, you can't see the lines. Down 1, 2, 3. Okay, 2, -5. I go to 2 on the x, and 5, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the y. Okay, 1, -3. I go to 1 on the x, 1, 2, 3. And it's not a V, it's a U. It needs to curve, okay? Don't want to see, I'd rather not see V's, okay? All right. What do we have here? No parentheses. The second power is there, so it's a parabola. And if there are no parentheses, it is in standard form. Okay, when you have standard form, I would like the A and the B labeled right away. So that's going to be A, it's going to be B. We don't really need C, okay? I mean, the 4 is C, but you're not going to need to use that. Okay, so make a table. And the middle vertex, Okay, that's your x. We find that using the opposite of b divided by 2, the product of 2 and a. So opposite of b divided by the product of 2 and a. Okay, so the opposite of b is positive 5 because b is negative 5. And then I go 2. That 2 is always there. It's part of the formula. 2 and 1. Okay, so 2 times 1 is 2. So we have 5 divided by 2. And that's a decimal. It equals 2.5. So that's what we're going to roll with. So 2.5 is the middle x. Plus 1 and minus 1 to find the outer x. Okay, so I'm going to plus 1. That's going to be 3.5. And minus 1 is 1.5. Okay, so we use a calculator. So we got 1. And then I'm going to replace the x with a parentheses. And we're going to put 3.5 in for x here and here. But the first x, after I close that, needs to be raised to the second power. Minus 5. And then we're going to put 3.5 in there. Plus 4. Okay, I got negative 1.25. Okay, now 2.5, so I got 1, and I'm going to put 2.5. Minus 5, and then 2.5, plus 4. Negative 2.25. Okay, and then 1.5 in again, so we got 1, and then 1.5 to the second. Minus 5, 1.5, plus 4. Okay, negative 1.25. Okay, so 3.5, negative 1.25. You just go 1, 2, 3, and then halfway, and then you're going to go down 1, and then just a little bit past there. Okay, it's between 1 and 2. Negative 1 and negative 2. 2.5, negative 2.25. Okay, so 1, 2 halfway, and then down 1, 2, and then just a little bit. 1.5, negative 1.1, and then halfway, and then down 1 and 2. And there's my parabola. Okay, and that is how you graph parabolas that are in standard form. Okay. Okay, now the next one, there is a parenthesis, so it's not standard form. Now, how many parentheses are there? There's 1, because the second power is there, so I know it's a parabola, and there's 1 parenthesis, just 1, so that's in vertex form. So again, we make a table. We're still going to use our table. And to find the middle vertex here, remember A, so you can see there's a foreign for A, and then H and K. Those will just be numbers, okay? You don't really have to label the letters on the vertex form, only on standard form, because you have to know what B and A are. But here you don't have to. To find your middle vertex, you set the inside of the parentheses equal to 0 and solve it. Do that on top. So what's the expression in the parentheses? It's x plus 2. Now, why are we setting it equal to 0? Because this is what is to the second power. And like a vertex is a high or a low point. Think of it as a low point. And the lowest anything to the second power can be equal to is 0. Because if you keep taking negatives or positives or whatever times themselves, you're not going to get anything lower than 0. Okay? And that's why we set it equal to 0. And then I just solve it. I minus 2, and that gives me negative 2. Okay, so that will be our middle vertex point. And then plus 1, minus 1 to find the outer x's. Okay. So if I add plus 1, you're going to get negative 1, negative 3. Doesn't matter the order they're put, not really. Okay, if you have negative 3, negative 1, it's not going to make a difference. Okay, substitute on the calculator for your y. Okay. So I've got 4 parentheses, and then x comes out. We're going to put negative 1 plus 2, close it, and then we need to go to raise that to the second power, and then minus 3. Okay, so I got 1, and I'm expecting that I will get 1 down here, but I'm going to try to make sure. So 4, and then we're going to go negative 2 plus 2, second power, minus 3. Gives me negative 3. One little trick, a lot of you probably won't remember it, and you don't need to, but in vertex form, it's called vertex form because the vertex right away is known. It'll be the opposite of what's in there for the x, so plus 2, the opposite's negative 2, and it will be this number behind here for the y, okay? But that's hard to memorize if you're not a real big math person, so just go with the plug and chug, okay? So 4, and then negative 3 plus 2, second, and then minus 3, okay? 1. Okay, so negative 1, 1, so left 1, up 1. Negative 2, negative 3. Negative 3, 1. And there's my parabola. Okay. I don't think this is in standard form because there's a parentheses and there's the second powers there, so I know right away it's a parabola. So what form is it in? That would be in vertex again. Okay, so to find your middle vertex, remember A, H, and K will not be there. You won't see them. They'll be numbers instead. Okay, set the inside parentheses equal to 0 and solve. So x minus 5 equals 0. Easy to solve it. That would be 5. So 5 is my middle. And then I add 1 and take away 1. All right, so plug and chug. Negative 3. And then we're going to go 6 minus 5. Second power. Then plus 6. I got 3. Now 5, so negative 3. And then 5 minus 5, second power, plus 6, and that's 6. Okay, negative 3, and then 4 minus 5, second power, plus 6 is 3. Again, the reason it's called vertex form is because the vertex is imminent. The middle will be the opposite of what it's inside with the x. So the opposite of minus 5 is 5, and then it always comes out as this value here. But don't worry about memorizing that, okay? You'll never get through it. You just have to know how to follow the process. Okay, so 6, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now it's upside down, and what's causing that is the negative coefficient in front of the equation. Whenever you have a negative in front, it will go that way. The first 3 had positive leading coefficients. Okay. All right, that's vertex form. Now, factored form. You don't see a second power, but there are 2 x's that are visible inside of 2 parentheses. That's how to know that, okay? So it's not standard. It's not vertex because I have 2 parentheses with x inside. It's a parabola. And you're like, I thought it had to have a second power. It does. X times x is x to the second. Parabola, and that's in factored form. Okay, so let's go start this. You're going to make a table. Again, all parabolas you graph with a table. You don't use slope, intercept. That's only for lines. Okay. Now we're going to actually change course here. You need to find the outer x values first by setting the inside parentheses equal to 0 and solve. So there are 2 parentheses. So I just do what I had been doing, but except instead of just having 1, there are 2. And those are actually my outer x values. So I plus 3, and I get 3. Minus 5, I get negative 5. Now those are your outer x values, 3 and negative 5. You put them as the outers, okay? And to find your middle vertex, you're going to add the outer values together and divide the sum by 2. So let's add these together. You're actually finding the average, so you add them together. And that's negative 2, and don't forget to divide by 2. Why are we dividing by 2? Because how many numbers did I just add together? 2, okay? That's negative 1. And that's your middle vertex. Now to find y in the calculator, just substitute, and it said the outer y's will equal 0 because they are x-intercepts, and I'll explain why here in a second. So we're going to put 3 in, so 5 parentheses. I'm going to put 3 minus 3, and then 3 plus 5. Now the reason this is going to equal 0 is because one of the factors, which is 3 minus 3, is 0. So if one of the factors is 0, the whole product's 0. Okay. The same thing's going to happen with the negative 5 in here. Okay, so I go 5, and then negative 1 minus 3, and then negative 1 plus 5. I got negative 80, and that's common on factored form to get a huge number in the middle. Okay, so I have 5, and then negative 5 minus 3, and then negative 5 plus 5, and that's 0. Okay, so 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. And again, the reason that product was 0 is because negative 5 plus 5 is 0, so that's one of the factors at 0. So if you multiply a bunch of factors, but one of them 0, the whole product is 0. Okay, negative 1, negative 80. So left 1, down 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Okay, negative 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these parabolas do, on factored form, do tend to be pretty wide. All right, next one. Well, it's not in standard form. It's not in vertex form because there's 2 parentheses. It is a parabola. And it is in factored form again because there are 2 parentheses. Once again, these letters I've circled, there's just replaced with numbers. The only time you need to really be concerned with them is on standard, the A and the B, because you need that opposite of B 2 times A. Okay, same idea. We're going to find the outer x values first by setting the inside equal to 0 and solving them, both of them. So x minus 3, I need to find what would make that equal to 0, which is pretty darn easy. So probably 3, I'm guessing. So yep, 3. That's your first x. And negative 4, that's going to be, and these are your outer x's. Okay, now to find the middle, you're finding the average. Okay. So I find the sum of 3 and negative 4, and that's negative 1. And then I need to divide that by 2. That's decimal, and it's not negative 2. Again, the commutative property doesn't work on division. 1 divided by 2 gives you something totally different than 2 divided by 1. Okay, so I've got negative 2, and then 3 minus 3, 3 plus 4, and that gives me 0. Just like I said, the outer y's will be 0, because 3 minus 3, well, that makes that factor 0, so the whole product is 0. Okay, so I have negative 2, and then negative 0.5 minus 3, negative 0.5 plus 4, 24.5. Some of you are like, well, I'll just go 25. Yeah, no, you're not. Just keep it like that. It's easy to graph. You just don't go quite to 25 if you go by 5s. Negative 2, and then negative 4 minus 3. Negative 4 plus 4, and that's 0. Okay, just graph them. So 3, 0. 1, 2, 3. Negative 0.5, so left there. And then go up by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 20, about short of 25. And then negative 4, 0, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this parabola ended up upside down. Why did it? Because there's a negative in front of the leading coefficient 2. Up here that's positive, so that's why it ends up that way. Okay. Get rid of the absolute values. We're not learning how to graph those. Okay, it's totally obsolete. And you also on the assignment don't do number 4. You just need to do 1, 2, and 3. What they are, they're all parabolas, one of each type. Okay. Go get them.